On this edition of ITG, the Mountaineers get it done on senior day. They secure bowl eligibility 31-21, a victory in the home finale over UCF. We'll break it all down, that and more on this edition of In the Gun.
You are now watching Believe.
ITG.
With Wes, Owen, and Jed.
I've got the best teammates in the business here, all right?
No way!
They both played the game. They both know the game. Owen is the runaway beer truck known for having some fun.
Owen Schmidt, you have a podcast, In the Gun.
Owen Schmidt, like a runaway beer truck down the sidelines.
Jed is the signal caller who is the X's and O's and the brainiac.
First of all, Jed's research is pretty impressive.
So we've combined those two skill sets.
Skills I've acquired over a very long career.
You are In the Gun.
Once you enter this family, there's no getting out.
In the Gun, episode 215 of your new favorite WVU football podcast. I'm Wes Euler, flanked by the signal caller for this edition of ITG. And as always, we're brought to you in part by our friends at BetOnline. The game starts here. And where we start, of course, this is the UCF Recap. The Mountaineers take care of business. Final home game of the year, senior day. They get back above 500, move to 6-5, secure bowl eligibility in the process as they continue to be undefeated against UCF, both all-time 4-0 and now 2-0 in Big 12 conference play. And final home game of the season. I was happy, Jed, because I finally got my first non-weather delay. Actually, you know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, that was my only FBS win country roads of the season, because Albany, is obviously an FCS program. And then for the Kansas game, I had my two girls with me, and two girls under the age of 3 at that point were not making it through a 2-hour weather delay. So a game that the Mountaineers really controlled from start to finish. There were some times where UCF punched back, but every time they did, I thought the Mountaineers answered the bell in that regard. Comfortable win might be doing UCF a disservice, but certainly I would say a win where WVU was firmly in the driver's seat from start to finish. And, another nice midday game. I really got to kind of take in the light show and all of that stuff for the first time as well, too. So all is well that ends well. 31-21, final home game of the season.
Quick aside, you mentioned Kansas. So I do have to throw out something that was posted on Twitter that I don't even know where it originally came from. One of the more remarkable things I've heard in a while. Kansas just became on Saturday the first team in college football history with a losing record to capture its third win over a ranked team. Welcome to the Big 12.
It's a crazy
That's
statistic.
How bizarre, upside down. Even our 5 and 6 teams are scary enough to knock off 3 ranked teams. But yeah, Wes, good environment, all things considered, good showing. I agree with you. If you call it comfortable, that is a bit of a disservice to UCF. I think that's qualified almost by saying relatively comfortable, maybe.
Right.
Because it kind of felt relatively comfortable. But when they
in the sense of a conference, a conference football game, we're not playing Albany. You know what I mean? We're not playing.
Yeah, exactly. And we talked all last week about how dynamic the Central Florida, how their UCF offense was, and they have weapons, and they have guys that can make things happen from RJ Harvey on down the line, and to hold them as far below their season rushing average as we did. To force their freshman quarterback into an inefficient game. All those things mattered. They were poor in the transition downs. They were 3-9 on third down. So that's what the defense did well. There were times that, from a prevent standpoint, we give up a few chunks of yards here and there. They had one splash play on us on a double move where they just flat out beat us. But yeah, by and large, it was a 3-phase effort. We had some nice kickoff returns. The special teams units got involved. Ollie Straw was a central part of everything.
He was
the only punter in history to have a personal foul called on him. And meanwhile, despite the personal foul, still end up with a punt inside the 20. because he pinned him on the 3. And even when they added the 15, they still only got to the 18. So you'll never again see that. A personal
That
foul on the
was
punter and the punt inside the 20.
hilarious. Like we were
And meanwhile,
real quick, Jed. We were
10
just
from
laughing
Australia,
about
they're
that.
watching him.
That's awesome. That's awesome to hear that he had his family in from down under. We were laughing about that moment as well too, because I'm pretty sure on that drive, right, UCF did pick up a couple first downs, but then either went turnover on downs on 4th down or maybe ended up
like
punting.
That.
But it didn't that personal foul on Ollie Straw ultimately didn't bite you in the butt. That's where I was going with that, because you're kind of like, you love to see your punter getting aggressive and having his guys back, but at the same time, you're like, man, you got them pinned at the 3-yard line, a chance to really bury them, and you gave them a little bit of breath, right? But we were kind of laughing like, we can laugh about that Ollie Straw thing now forever because it didn't cost you. Your defense was still able to get off the field. Again, all is well that ends well. So yeah, what a night for Ollie.
That's well said, and it's a game full of rich irony for Ollie Straw, because think about it, Wes. Just like you said, the personal foul didn't sneak back up and bite us. Meanwhile, earlier in the game, I'm trying to think of when it played out, when they stripped Garrett and the ball went bouncing 15 yards backwards and Jaheim jumps on inside the 5. You're thinking, wow, Jaheim saved us there.
Yep.
And then Ollie punting from his own end zone with his feet almost on the back line, booms a 54-yarder and backs them all the way up for their own 40. So Ollie bailed us out there. And despite that, a few plays later, UCF did score a touchdown. So
Yeah,
we
and
did
you know
everything right, and they scored a touchdown, and we get the personal foul on the punter, and we get out of it unscathed. It was just
No
funny
doubt.
how that worked out.
And this might I don't want to go too deep in the weeds here, as we're still kind of in the intro phase of this, but there were a lot of those moments, kind of those pivotal moments where it felt like, okay, if we're gonna give momentum back to UCF, this could be the time. There were a few of those times, right? When there was the fumble and we were backed up, and what does Ollie do? He booms a 55-yard punt or whatever it was to give us some breath. A lot of those different moments. Man, you kind of mentioned the special teams as well too. Like, I thought the defense had a lot of those moments, because that punt return, or that punt could have been one, right, where you thought you had them pinned at the 3, all of a sudden they get out from the shadow of their end zone a little bit. Didn't matter. The defense got off the field. I was really, maybe the moment that I was most concerned was, you're up 14-0. You are firmly in the driver's seat, but UCF finally has that moment where they punch back, right? They score, but then P. Fox gets the great punt return right back to midfield, and you're thinking, okay, no problem. Worst case scenario here, we'll pick up a first down or two. We kick a field goal. It's a 2-possession game again all of a sudden. But at 14-7, you get that good punt return from P. Fox to midfield. You go 3 and out, and you give them the ball right back. And I'm kind of like, ooh, like you really didn't want to go 3 and out there, right? Like, not there in that moment. Your defense gets right back off the field. I mean, there was a lot of those moments. Offense, when it felt like UCF was gaining a little momentum and maybe making it a close game, getting back to 2 possession. Here we go. If UCF scores again, this will really be interesting. The offense would answer with a long drive and score a touchdown or kick a field goal. Every time they made it to the red zone, except for the very end of the game situation, obviously, where Garrett kneeled down on that thing, we scored points. I thought everybody kind of pulled the rope, to use an old analogy there, in that regard. When it felt like the defense was on their heels a little bit, the offense would help them out. When it felt like the offense was on their heels a little bit, the defense would help them out. Special teams played their role in that as well too. I just thought that the complementary football element of the team win was certainly there Saturday afternoon and evening.
At one point during the game, Tony in the broadcast referred to the West Virginia offense as having a feast or famine kind of night. And boy, did that hold true. When you look at the game box, we had 10 possessions, 5 scoring drives, 4 3-and-outs, and then a victory formation. So it's So
it was 3 and out. It was 3 and out or getting some points. Yeah,
3 and out or the whole way down the field. So that's exactly right. So it absolutely was feast or famine. But to see the seniors go out with what this group's been through, from COVID to taking us from college football 1.0 to 2.0 into this new sport, this group's been through a lot. So I'm glad that they went out at home on a high note. And, I posted some things, Wes, about the crowd. And it's not that the crowd was overwhelming, Look, I was expecting an incredibly underwhelming crowd, almost to the point that I was like, "Oh man, are we going to get the 27K we had against Louisiana Tech in 1992?" Because you got all these factors working against this. See, here's the way this has always worked at Mountaineer Field since the stadium opened in 1980, and it kind of started that season. That season in 1980. So the novelty was at full peak, full blush novelty. So everybody was all excited and amped up about this new facility. Even that week or even that year, guess what the lowest attended game was that season? The game that was played the weekend going into Thanksgiving. Now, I've seen that happen throughout the course of my entire life as a Mountaineer fan, new facility or even the old facility to some extent. You kind of come to expect, irrespective of what you're doing outside of a couple crazy exceptions that we'll talk about, you expect weak crowds that weekend. And I've always asked why. Well, the reasons I've been given, they kind of make sense. Students are out of town. All right, that's strike one. Okay, if that's a reason you want to offer for why I see this, okay. Strike two, people are getting to jump on deer camp starting or deer season starting Monday. They get to deer camp. That erodes the crowd. Some people have offered that as a reason why we have these weak crowds. And then sometimes it's bad weather. I'm like, okay, sometimes
usually
it is.
usually
These
is
are,
bad. It's usually at least
these are
cold.
all fair reasons.
At
okay?
best it's cold.
Well, here's what I can tell you. Unless West Virginia is playing for some type of championship, being good's not enough. Good teams still see the crowd suffer, and that's what we'll get into here. But if you're playing for a championship, ironically, that's the same weekend that when West Virginia was unbeaten playing number 4 Miami, we set the all-time Mountaineer Field record with 70,000 plus. That's the same weekend, albeit Friday night going into that weekend, that we had 60,000 plus capacity against a ranked Oklahoma team because we were playing with a Birth to Jerry world online. When you go back and look in 1988, when we were 10-0 hosting a really good Syracuse team to end the year, we had 65,000 at that game. So those are the handful of times of the exception to the rule when we were super good playing for all the marbles. All of a sudden, those reasons people typically offer, students out of town, bad weather, hunting camp, well, they kind of relax those reasons. And those are the games they come to, those 3 games in 40 years, okay, that they come to. But we've seen teams that were 8-2, okay, have played before that weekend, 8-2 West Virginia teams play in front of the smallest crowd they played in front of all season that weekend. We've seen a 7-3 Mountaineer team against Texas play in front of, I think it was the second smallest crowd. When you look at, even when Tavon did what he did against a ranked Oklahoma team, that was like the smallest or second smallest. I think the smallest crowd we played in front of all year. Don Nealon's final home game at Mountaineer Field, smallest home game all year. You wouldn't think that's the case unless something is impacting it beyond whether you're 8-2, which we've seen 8-2 teams play in front of small crowds, or 3-7, 4-6. This year it was 5-5. So I simply wanted to say hats off to Mountaineer Nation, not because this was some robust record-setting crowd. When I walked out of the tunnel, getting ready for the run-on as they're introducing the seniors, again, I was fearful of what I might see. I'm hearing all these things. Okay, the students are out of town. We know. I've heard that for 40 years. People are telling me, well, the deer camp thing's obviously in play. Well, the bad weather, it's unpredictable. Some saying rain, it's cold, whatever. I didn't know what to expect because of the reasons people always give. So I was really concerned. Are we going to come out here and see 25, 28,000, whatever in fact it might be? And as soon as I walked out of the tunnel, I was like, look, I don't know what I'm looking at, but it ain't that. Okay. It's not a big crowd, but it's not 2013 Iowa State, because I remember what that looked like. So hats off to those who were there, because there were times throughout that game that crowd got noisy. Again, in a weekend, whether we're good, whether we're bad, whether we're average, that traditionally has small crowds since this stadium opened in 1980, unless we're playing for a national championship. So hats off to Mountaineer fans. And I thought that was worth saying, because there were moments during that game, I think they got loud enough to impact the game. There were moments they made noise. The Let's Go chant was pretty cool. So they held their own. They say it was officially at 40. I'm not in the business of going out and taking a head count. I have no idea about any of these numbers, whether it was 1980 or on Saturday. But I just know that's what's officially reported. Now, they changed that through the years. They report it differently or count it differently. I'm just telling you, when I walked out of the tunnel and looked up, it was a somewhat of a sigh of relief in terms of what I expected, because I expected what I saw against Iowa State back in 2013, or even the Louisiana Tech game they talk about in 1992, 27,000. So again, not a robust crowd. Don't take that I'm saying that. I'm not. Just what I'm saying is we're blessed to have a fan base that when you're struggling through a season or a stretch like we have, and you come in at 5-5 to your final home game, there's not a lot of fan bases that will even turn out the way that ours did Saturday. I mean, right up the road, Pitt was hosting Clemson last month in a very meaningful 7-2 versus 7-2 ACC matchup. They didn't have anywhere near what we had Saturday. And again, that's a crowd that we might make fun of, is what we had on Saturday. So that's what I wanted to say about that. You were among those. So what say you?
Well, Jed, first of all, like all those games that you mentioned, I was at. The Tavon, Oklahoma game, I was there. The 2013 Iowa State game where we were up 31-7 and then lost in triple overtime. That was my last game as a student. I was there. The Will Greer, Kyler Murray game, I was there. And then, of course, yesterday, because you and I are recording this on Sunday, we'll get this out a day earlier than we usually do. Worked out well with me not having Steelers duties this Sunday since the Steelers played on Thursday Night Football this week. But yeah, listen, it was not some wow record-setting, light your hair on fire crowd. But I know you and I have had this conversation before. I'm trying to remember, Jed. You know when it was? It was the 2 years ago Thursday night game against Baylor. That's when we had this conversation because two years ago, kind of similar thing. It's towards the end of the season. We're floating around 500. Maybe it was in the middle of the season. We're floating around 500, but the weather's starting to turn. It's a Thursday night, which is always difficult. And we kind of talked about how, hey, it wasn't a sellout or even really close, but the 40,000-ish, the 38, 39, 40, 42, whatever thousand people that showed up are the ones that hang on every snap, or the ones that love it, are the ones that want WVU to win every week. They don't care about any of the parameters around it. They don't care what it means for the future of the coaching staff or anybody or anything like that. They just want to show up. They want to have a good time. They want to make some noise, and they want to see their Mountaineers win. And for the people that stayed home on Saturday, I want to make this very clear. I am not trying to do the high horse thing here at all. If the Steelers would have played on Sunday this week, I would have probably used that as an excuse to not go to the game on Saturday. Because the whole week I was like, man, I could really use a weekend off. I've been running ragged with football every Saturday and Sunday since August and July and training camps. We got a bunch of family coming to town with Thanksgiving, my two daughters and everything. My wife's been a little under the weather this week. I mean, all week I thought about, should I really go? Should I really go? Should I really go? And what, brings me back there is obviously I have the opportunity to, and I'm 90 minutes away, which isn't close, but it's not far either. And, I only get 4, 5, 6, maybe 7 of these a year if you're lucky. And the people that, were there are sickos just like me. They don't care about the holidays. They don't care about other things going on. They don't care about the weather. They just want to watch the Mountaineers play one more time. They want to see those seniors go out with a victory. And again, this is not like a high horse, like trying to draw a divide, nothing like that. But when it's those types of games, those 35 to 45,000 people that show up for those type of games, they're the best sports fans you could ever want to meet in your life. Professional, college, football, basketball, baseball, hockey, I don't care. The college football fans that show up at the end of the season when the weather is crap and the team is 500 or worse, those are the best fans in sports. So shout out to because listen, it's still relatively easy for me. I live 90 minutes away. There were a lot of people that had to put in a lot more effort than me to go to the game. So big salute.
To see the shout outs. Go ahead, Wes.
I was just going to say big salute to everybody there, including I met Chad from Rochester, New York, speaking of people that put in more effort than me to be there. A big ITG listener. It's like midway through the third quarter, maybe the fourth quarter, and I hear a Wes Euler, and I turn around, and it's this guy with his 2 sons, and his name was Chad, and they're from Rochester, and he brought his boys to the game, and his sons were a little cold, but they were having a good time. So big shout out to Chad, his boys, and everybody else who was attendance there on Saturday for, at least ending the regular season home slate on a positive note.
And that's terrific to hear. Again, there's people coming from all points beyond. I mean, Parkersburg, Charleston, Beckley. It's not easy. It's not easy to get there. I understand there's other things you have to do, and I understand there's priorities in life, which is what makes it impressive when enough people show up to make noise. I'm looking at the game book right now. It lists attendance 40,722. Again, I was fearful that was going to say 28,909. I didn't know what to expect. So I shouldn't have sold Mountaineer Nation short. Again, a low bar to meet under the circumstances this weekend. But historically, Wes, I've looked at this. I've looked at this before. It's happened. This was the 21st time in the history of the facility that we played this weekend. Now, out of those 21 times, whether you played that Saturday going into Thanksgiving, or even there were one or two on the Thursday or Friday that same weekend, of the 21, 14 times it was the smallest crowd of the season. It doesn't happen every year, obviously. Sometimes we're on the road.
Right.
Sometimes it
Right.
falls after or before that week. Now, 14 times out of 21, it's been the smallest crowd all year. 3 other times out of those 21, it's been the second smallest crowd of the year. And then among those 21 are the 70,000 Miami, the 60,000 Oklahoma. Those are 2 of the other that I haven't mentioned of the 4.
Yeah.
And then here's really the barometer that you need to understand, and it really gives it the perspective I think you need. In 1988, West Virginia was unbeaten 10-0, trying to go 11-0. First perfect regular season in history against a good Syracuse team. 65,000 on hand that weekend. 2 years earlier, that same weekend, 65,088. 1988, 65K. 2 years earlier, same weekend, also against Syracuse, we were 4-6, 40,000.
Yeah.
See, when you're 4-6, that's when the things people tell me.
I get
Look,
it.
I'm not coming up with the excuses. I've been told the excuses.
Jed, it's probably better on those people. Like, I'm the sicko for going. Okay, I'm not trying to point fingers at the people that aren't going.
Wes, is when I hear other fan bases brag to me about their fan base, and I don't want to get caught up in this whole with them or not. I take pride in Mountaineer Nation, right? And I would hold our best against anybody's best. And they always try and come at me with, well, I'll tell you what, that one time we were in the top 10 and we hosted Penn State. Like, you might be a Minnesota fan. Remember when PJ Fleck went on that run? Like, I got a buddy in Minnesota.
Sure.
I'll tell you what, we had 52,000 and that place was packed wall to wall. And we were pushing the top 10 and we were playing Penn State. I'm like, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Show me what it looks like when you're 5-5. Don't you understand? That is the mark of a fan base. Any fan base in America, I would hope, looks that way and stays for 2 hours extra when you're in the top 10 and you're playing for the biggest prizes. But I like West Virginia fans, what distinguishes us. We don't have to be playing for the biggest prizes. It's even better, of course, than everything you would expect when we are, as evidenced by those games we just gave. But even when you're not, when other teams would sag more, we still put enough in the seats to make noise. We still have enough there to make a difference. Even when it's among the worst of the worst and people are frustrated and struggling, we still turn out enough to at least make some noise in numbers that we might make fun of, but other schools in our stratosphere, we're the envy of these other fan bases. I'm not talking about blue bloods or anything like that, but what I'm saying is that's what makes our fan base different. You might want to make fun of the 40,000 that were listed being there on Saturday. I'm proud of those 40,000 because I travel the country. I used to travel the Big East circuit. I saw the crowds they had and the crowds they didn't. I've traveled some of the Big 12 teams where I've seen them struggle. I know what happens when you're average or a little below average. I know what that typically looks like. That is when you determine what a fan base truly brings to bear. And that's why I wanted to bring that up. Hats off to Mountaineer fans for at least showing up in enough force to truly make noise, whatever the number might have been. Make fun of it if you want. I was happy to hear noise at that stadium for those seniors on Saturday, knowing there's tons of programs across the country that if they're sitting there at 5-5, don't make that kind of noise.
Well, Jed, from the bottom of my heart, you're welcome. Saw plenty of beautiful looking vehicles with Toothman license plates in Morgantown on Saturday. I tell you, we all know cars cost less in Grafton. Big shout out and thank you to everybody at Team Toothman and our guy JR for being a presenting sponsor of In the Gun. Let's take a break here. On the other side, I know Jed has some more particulars in that 31-21 win that he wants to get into. I've got a couple, 1 or 2 observations and a key moment in the game that I thought to highlight as well, too. We'll get into all of that when we return on the other side. You are In the Gun. For nearly 20 years, Fortis has been the nation's leader in providing guaranteed roof performance programs for commercial buildings. Fortis offers roof performance solutions that feature extensive initial and ongoing reconditioning for commercial buildings as an alternative to traditional replacement, with long-term performance guarantees that are backed by global leader Lloyd's of London. Fortis offers a comprehensive range of roof performance management programs that provide financial security, extend the life of our customers' roofs, and make a significant impact on ROI. Fortis is currently improving performance and increasing ROI for customers at more than 4,800 locations, with more than 140 million square feet protected, including many Fortune 500 companies that have turned to Fortis to save money, gain financial certainty, and extend the life of their existing roofs. Fortis has helped customers save more than $520 million in capital roof replacement costs for an average ROI of over 250%. To learn more, visit fortis.us.com. Fortis, roof performance and financial certainty guaranteed.
Nobody supports the blue and gold Mountaineers like Toothman Ford. With over 20 NIL deals and counting, Toothman Ford continues to rally behind our student athletes. And it's time we rally and support the dealer that supports the Mountaineers. Not only does Toothman Ford offer the best prices in the state on pre-owned, their never over MSRP campaign on new Fords guaranteed to save you thousands. Drive with pride all season long, knowing you're supporting the dealer that fuels our Mountaineers. Toothman Ford, where cars cost less, in Grafton and at toothmanford.com.
There are better-known tractors in the world than Coyote. Ones with bigger names, longer histories, more popular hats, cute toy lines. But there's not a single tractor ever been built that's better equipped to do the dirty work. So we'll just focus on what really matters. Coyote, we dig dirt.
Now at Johnston Equipment, get 0% financing for 72 months, plus a free loader on select Coyote models in stock. Visit us on Route 33 between Weston and Buchanan.
Back in the gun here as we roll along. It's time to continue to recap the 31-21 home win against UCF. Moves the Mountaineers to 6-5. A victory on Senior Day secures a bowl berth for WVU for the 20th time in the last 23 seasons. And Jed, in victory, of course, you and I talk about this all the time. I mean, there's always those key moments. It's the game of inches, Al Pacino speech that we all know. And, I alluded to this in our first segment, how it felt like, and we even mentioned some of those specific moments where it felt like in kind of those swing moments, in those weighty moments, if you will, the Mountaineers won a lot more of those than they lost. The key sequence to me, though, was this 14-7 towards the end of the first half, and a first half that felt like you had largely controlled and outplayed them, but it was still a one possession, still a 14-7 game. You know you're getting the ball back at halftime as well, too, but WVU doesn't go conservative. They march down the field, a couple key possession down conversions to keep the drive going. And then Rodney Gallagher with one of the best catches that we've had all season right before the end of the half. Gives you that breathing room, gives you that big momentum back, the two-possession lead back, and you're getting the ball back. And then again, right out of the gate at halftime, it's 21-7. You go right down the field in like 3 minutes, drive down the field and score again. So Jed, that to me, to go from 14-7 at the end of the first half, and then in just mere minutes of actual game time, maybe 5-6 minutes of actual game time, you're up 28-7. That's winning time right there. That's how you get it done. Those are the type of things that when you play like that, when you can convert like that, you're a tough team to beat. And so that for me, going from 14-7 with the Rodney snag at the end there, and then coming right out of the half and going down the field quickly and scoring again. You went from a one-possession game to a three-possession game. And again, just about 5 minutes of game time. When you do that, you're going to win a lot of games. You're going to be tough to beat. So that, to me, was kind of the key sequence, the key moment.
You absolutely are, Wes. And what you're hitting on is, we discussed this quite a bit on the broadcast. It's what coaches refer to as the middle eight, obviously. Final 4 minutes of the first half, first 4 minutes of the second half. You got to win the middle eight. Neil says it all the time. Neil told him at halftime, hey, we're up 7-0 in the middle eight. Let's go out and make it 14. And that's exactly what we did. The two drives you're talking about, the first one, again, it was a 14-7 game, just like you said. We're back on our own 29-yard line. there's still plenty of time left. If they get a quick 3 and out, you're kind of worried about them doing something before the half. But instead, we put together a 12-play drive, consumed almost the entire clock, right up to the point in the final seconds that Rodney made that Willie Mays say, "Hey, kid," over his shoulder catch against that Will Backer in the end zone. So that puts us up 21-7. Now, for the first time in 18 games, we started the second half with the football.
18
I couldn't believe
games?
it. It was like
Good Lord.
18 games. Yeah, this has been a running stat that a lot of people are talking about and joking with Neil about. We had 17 consecutive games because we always take the ball. Other teams almost always defer.
No, makes sense now that you mention it. Yeah.
I had the microphone in the coin toss in the official's face, right? And KJ Jefferson is the captain of the other team. And when he said it, I almost laughed into the microphone. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. The streak is dead. The streak is dead. So they get the ball. We 3 and out, and we get it back and we drop down and score. But we get it to start the second half as a result. We put together the drive that you talked about, which was 5 plays, and that made it 28-7. And again, at that juncture, it was 28-7, right? I have one of the sheets in front of me.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, it kind of felt like it was a control that we never truly relinquished. They threatened a couple times after that, but it was a control that we never truly relinquished. You're right about that. I thought that was a key sequence, both before and after
and then,
the intermission.
Again, too, is kind of along the lines of the themes of the weighty moments. You get that 21-point lead, 3-possession lead, you're feeling comfortable. Right? Then that's when they have that 45-yard touchdown pass, the one kind of real splash impact. I mean, I know they had a couple 20, 22-yard runs and those
slant and go, yeah.
But in terms of a real big home run splash type play, that 45-yard touchdown pass, you were up 21. Okay, back to 14, back to a 2-possession game. There's still a lot of time left in the game. But you know what? Then you get into the fourth quarter. It's 4th and long. It's still a 2-possession game. And Garrett Green just has that Herculean run where he gets hit about a yard short and spins and still finds a way to get across the marker. I mean, it just, again, every moment where it felt like, okay, UCF is one play away from this really being a game again, WVU went out and made the play. They did it on offense. They did it on defense. They did it on special teams. And that's, again, those are those total team wins that are a lot of fun to witness.
And that critical juncture started at West Virginia's own 25. So once again, if they 3 and out you, get the ball back, that's scary stuff in a 14-point game. West Virginia starts at the 25, puts together a 14-play, 57-yard drive that consumed over 5.5 minutes. That, you always hear Neil talk about winning time. Like in those losses, we didn't make plays during winning time, like against Baylor. That was winning time, and we did make those plays. One of those critical plays was the play you just talked about. It's a 4th and 8. Garrett's not happy with the look. He uses what God gave him, escapes, plays Houdini, and makes something out of absolutely nothing. I mean, that was chicken salad right there. That's what that was.
And he did that. He did that a lot Saturday, Jed. He did that a lot of third and fourth long possession down, not 3rd and 3, not 4th and 2, like long possession downs where Garrett was making throws and making plays with his legs.
He made one play right in front of our bench, and it was about a 4-yard pickup, that maybe 5. That all I could think of was, okay, that's where that 5.3 yards after contact, third best in the country of all positions, comes from, because he was hit in the backfield. How he got out of there, I have no idea. And he ended up picking up 5 right in front of our. I mean, I thought he was just at least trying to get out of bounds. No, he picks up 5 yards. He doesn't just get back to the line. But what I liked about that sequence we're talking about, that same possession where Garrett converted that 4th and 8 with his legs, we were pretty aggressive. In other words, remember the call earlier when we went to the end zone on the 3rd down call? We took a shot to the end zone. And then even the 4th down sequence, that's another 4th and long. You're looking at 4th and 8. And I thought what was happening during the timeout, I was discussing this. I was like, all right, it was, I think, 3rd and 13 from the, let me think what that would have been. 3rd and 13 from around the 30 or 31. Because I remember thinking, all right, if you don't gain another yard, it's 47, 48 yards if you're thinking field goal. Now, why would you think field goal? Let's talk strategy here. It's a 31-21 game. All right, well, there's 2 schools of thought. You can go for the first down to try and put them away, Or depending on how well you trust that range with your kicker, you can go up 34-21 instead of 31-21. And yes, it's still by definition, 2-possession game, but let's face it,
get in
2
the end zone
touchdowns,
twice. Yep.
different animal. Yeah, it's not like if it's 10 points, you get the touchdown, you get down to the 35, you got a shot.
Yep.
But if it's 13 points, you got to get to the end zone
you got
twice.
35 more yards that you got to get.
Exactly. So, but meanwhile, what Neil was discussing the whole time, I didn't realize this until after the fact, but he was going to be aggressive the whole time. I thought when it was at the 31, it was 3rd and 13, especially picked up 5. I even said on the broadcast, well, obviously, we're probably going to be more comfortable with this 43-yard field goal range. Maybe that's why he did get Michael Hayes in there, maybe 48 in pregame with a stiff ball. He wasn't hitting it as well, but that's not the case at all. I mean, he was trying to pick up part of it to get back because he knew he was going to go for it on 4th. And he's like, look, I'm going game, set, match. I'm going for broke here, and we're going to throw the football and try and get this first down. That's exactly what we did. Great throw by Garrett. I had kind of the same from our sidelines. The angle that I had was kind of right behind Garrett, seeing his angle when he made the throw. And to see him throw that just away from that DB and to see Huddy make the play that he made. What a night for Huddy. Hudson Clement had a great game.
That was another thing I had in my notes was he was outstanding.
I mean, it was 3 major plays, that being one of them that I could think of that I have in my notes that he just absolutely made, and we had to have something delivered. But I loved the aggression going for the win to put UCF away, and that's exactly how it unfolded. And that was the type of thing, that mentality that we were 8 of 18 on 3rd down. Serviceable, right? But we always warn you, don't read too much into Neil Brown's 3rd down numbers because he's a 4-down guy. So often he's calling the play, so he knows on 3rd down, hey, do I need the first down or I need half of it to go for it on 4th? Well, this was a night, one of the big storylines, we were 4 for 4 on 4th down. So when you look at end of possession downs, which is how Neil views this, we were 12 of 18, 67%, 2 out of every 3. That's going to win some football games. And those 4 all came at critical times when UCF really kind of desperately needed to get us off the field. So all the times against Baylor when we were struggling, and we weren't just 2 for 5 on 4th down against Baylor, we started 0 for 3, and those were at critical times. Those failures on 4th down, those failures turned into successes against UCF. And as big a difference as the failures made in the loss to Baylor, the successes made on 4th down in the win against UCF. And that was something that I thought made a big difference in this football game.
Completely agree. Again, those weighty moments, those possession downs, those key swing moments. It was WVU coming out on top. And yeah, I like how you put that 12 out of 18 when you kind of slice it in terms of possession downs. That's winning football without a doubt. Another thank you to our friends at Fortis, our guy Rick Lewis, for roof performance and financial certainty guaranteed. You got to visit fortis.us.com. Jed, did you have because my last thing to bring up was I just put in my notes here, feed 3, and because Hudson Clement was outstanding, like we just talked about. Was there you mentioned you had a trivia question or something you wanted to run by me too. I don't want to forget this.
I'm going to get to that.
Okay.
It's kind of trivia in my weird own way, but
that's kind of my final talking points. If you got anything else,
we'll close with that. But I want to talk about some of the pressure oriented things that UCF did. We knew going in this was what was strange about defensively their concepts. They're considered an odd stack team, but they're only in that odd stack configuration about a quarter of the time. They move a lot of pieces around. And they'll even run a lot of even front 4-2-5. They'll run some conventional 3-4. But they move those pieces, especially on the interior round. But they have those 2 big, beefy defensive tackles, and they have 3 linebacker transfers that really play good football for them this year. That is why they have so drastically improved against the run. Well, they track stats, Wes. It's weird in college. It has some caveats that the NFL doesn't have. Well, one of the caveats is, okay, like a sack counts against your rushing yards traditionally, but in the NFL counts against your passing yards. One other one, if you have a tackle for loss, okay, first of all, let's say this. If you have a quarterback sack, the way that stat is tracked, it is both the sack and the tackle for loss.
Correct.
Understand? Correct. So you get credit for both. But now let's say you hit the running back for a 2-yard loss. That's only a TFL.
Correct.
A sack is both.
Correct.
But if you just hit the running back or somebody else in the backfield other than the quarterback, even if you hit the quarterback on a run play, it's a TFL, but on a pass play, it's a sack and a TFL. Well, what was interesting about the way UCF manages its defense with Addison Williams is a lot of run blitzes are figured in here because they were number 2 in the Big 12 in tackles for loss. Now, typically, you would expect most defenses' sacks to come in a little bit behind that or right close to it. But they were toward the bottom of the conference in quarterback sacks. So their TFLs were true TFLs.
Sure.
They were true disruptions against the run game. And when you track their front seven, as I was watching tape, I was taking notes and I was checking numbers after the fact, looking at some of the metrics. And it was impressive because I had 5 of their 7 personnel members of their front 7, their D-line and linebackers, with 5 or more, each of the 5 with 5 or more TFLs. And we saw some of that disruption Saturday. They had 9 TFLs and knocked us off schedule a lot. Now, what was different with what they did to us, and you mentioned Hudson Clement, we're going to get to that. What was different was they blitz typically about 30% of the time, a little more, a couple ticks above what we'd seen in recent weeks from Baylor or Cincinnati. I'll tell you what, there was something they saw in the West Virginia game plan where they went for broke and they dialed up the heat meter because that about doubled. They went from 30 to probably in the ballpark of 60% of the snaps. They brought the heat against Garrett. And the thing about it was there were times that he had to come up with, again, let's get slightly technical. When you hear us say cover zero, I think listeners to this podcast probably know that means true man coverage with no safety deep, no deep help. So it's mano-a-mano. Now, what that typically means to the quarterback, they're blitzing one more than you can block. So the quarterback is responsible for that unblocked extra blitzer, which means he has to be in some concept that he has a quick answer throw. There's different ways you can do it. You can attack deep, you can attack the quick game, but you have to get it out fast. If you get it deep, it has to be a type of route that you can get out quickly. When you remember the deep, skinny post to Hudson Clement, when he had that corner draped all over him, that was a cover zero man beater. And that was the type of throw we used to make a living on this with Rich at Glenville. When I'd see zero, I'd check to a cross face out of my slot, knowing he would cross the face of the defender that was down on top of him, beat him to the inside.
No help over the top.
And again, it's backyard football now because everybody is man-to-man. That guy has no deep help, which means my slot now has the entire football field to get open and separate.
Right,
so Garrett recognized that. Garrett recognized that. So he put just enough air on it to help Hudson separate. All you have, because again, you're going to take a shot. You're trading the throw for the hit. You're like, hey, I'm going to man up. I'm taking a shot to the mouth. I'll trade that shot to the mouth anytime for this throw against this coverage. So Garrett recognized that, put just enough touch on it, just enough arc on the football, helped Hudson separate. What you do is you kind of move to your back foot as you're releasing it. You don't have to be terribly accurate. What will happen is if you make that throw and just kind of sort of lead your receiver will be an athlete, and like a center fielder camping under a fly ball, he'll run under your throw and adjust to it and make you look accurate when in fact you're not, okay? You're just kind of leading him somewhere in the general direction of getting away from that DB. Hudson did that. Hudson jumps up, makes a great catch. It was a contested catch. It was a great throw. It was a great read. It was diagnosed well. That was a critical point in that football game. But that was something that I wanted to point out just because we saw so much more pressure than what UCF would typically bring against most teams. Now, we'll get in later in the week. Will Texas Tech maybe do some of that same stuff? I don't know, because there were times it worked for UCF, but obviously I just walked you through one of the times that it did not. But that pressure element or that pressure rate contributed to what I'm going to ask you. These are two stats that you don't often see live in this world, okay? We averaged 4.2 yards per play offensively.
Okay.
First of all, you don't often win averaging 4.2 yards per play. Now, how was that? There were times that we made some hay. CJ had some runs. Jaheim had some runs. Garrett had some throws. Garrett had a couple runs. But we just talked about it. Those 9 TFLs or 9 times you're getting knocked backwards, hurting your overall total yardage output. So as a result, that knocked our yards per play down to 4.2, which it's tough to win. You can, but it's tough. Now, you want to know when it's super tough to win. When you average 4.2 yards and the other team averages 6.3, when you have a 2 yards per play deficit, I haven't done it yet, but I intend to because CFB Stats changed their database and it goes back to 16. Otherwise, it would take me not much time at all to check and see when, in fact, the last time West Virginia managed to do that. Something tells me I'm going to have to go back a ways before I find a 2-yard deficit in average yards per play, because that's usually a pretty strong indicator as to who wins the football game.
No doubt.
It really is. If you win yards per play average, you will generally win the football game. So here's my question to you. Obviously, it's not when's the last time we had a 2 yards deficit and won on yards per play and won, but we averaged 4.2, UCF averaged 6.3, and we won. Can you name the last time we won with a yards per play of 4.2 or less? You have a couple choices here, actually.
Okay, let me ask this first. Did it happen earlier this year? Okay. Last time we won with less than 4.2 yards per play.
Earlier this year, what were you thinking?
Well, I mean, I immediately jumped out to the Cincinnati game because our defense practically scored 17 points.
Yeah, that was 5.5. So to your point,
yeah, I mean, to my point, that's still
4.2 is.
Yeah,
that's
right.
Yeah.
So, like in my mind, I'm thinking like
it felt like we struggled, right?
Yeah, and even I would say it had to be a low-scoring game then, but we just scored 31 points though with 4.2 yards per play. But man.
I'll tell you what, there's a version of you that's going to kick yourself when you hear this.
Was it one of the Dana wins, one of the ugly Dana wins against Kansas?
Tell you what, typically if you look at Dana's boxes, if he's at 4.2, we're getting blown out. Because it's like, he was usually putting up 7 and winning. But if it was at 4.2, something was really wrong.
Oh, wait, I got my guess. Last year's backyard brawl.
Boom, you hit one of them. Yeah. It's happened twice recently. You just hit one of them.
Last year's Texas Tech game?
You got them both.
Yeah.
You got them both. See?
Woo!
All right, now listen to this, Wes. You just hit both of them. Pitt's backyard brawl, we averaged 3.4 yards per play. But the reason we won, we held them to 3.8. Okay? And the Texas Tech game, of course, Nico started. So we dialed the game plan in a little bit with him making that start. Okay, so Nico was the leading rusher, as it turns out, in that game. But against Texas Tech, we averaged 4.0 yards per play, but the reason we won, we held them to 4.0 yards per play. So now think about that. That lends some perspective to what I'm saying. 4.2 yards per play yesterday against UCF, and they were at 6.3.
It's crazy.
That's a neat trick. Those two things should never live in the same statistical world.
No, Jed, I can't believe we scored 31 points, and it's not like there was a defensive touchdown or a punt return touchdown. I mean, I know they got set up in good field position in situations, but to average that to barely average, pardon me, over 4 yards and still score over 30 points. I mean, I don't know whether to be mad or impressed.
Now, they had 58 yards in penalties. There were a couple critical times that helped a little bit, right?
We played clean. I wanted to mention that at some point, too. No turnovers, only 2 penalties, clean football from the boys on Saturday.
We had no turnovers, and that wasn't, especially early in the game, that wasn't the best of weather. I mean, when they turned the ball over, Wes, you might have been able to tell from your seat, but when UCF turned it over, that it was truly raining at that point.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, early in the game, I'd call it mist, but then just for a short few minutes, and it happened when they turned the ball.
The wind was going too, so it was like a nasty, nasty in-your-face rain.
I'm having these conversations with the ball boys, and I'm checking the balls to see how hard they are, how wet they are. I'm glad Owen's not on here. He'd be laughing for 5 minutes. So anyway, what was causing the problems? The footballs were wet because of the ground, because the turf was holding the water. Now, once it dried out, which it kind of sort of did, the issue by the second quarter, I felt it was bone dry. It was perfectly fine. But when UCF committed that turnover when they had a fumble, that was a wet football. And it got dry as the game went on. And then there was this weird point in the third quarter. And again, I don't know if you could see it because it was literally right in front of me. It was slightly spitting snow. briefly, maybe 5 minutes and stop. And really, outside of that, it was cold, but that's all the precipitation we got was early in the game, and then that brief point in the third quarter that I wouldn't even call precipitation. It was I don't know, wintry mix at a point early in the game, and then it rained briefly, and then so it could have been much worse, but yeah, it was less than ideal circumstances to be trying to protect the football, and we didn't turn it over. Knock on wood. Played well in that respect, and as you said, pretty relatively penalty free. But they had a couple critical penalties. I mean, you had a critical PI. I mean, there were a couple critical penalties.
They had some procedure penalties and bad moments that really hurt their chances to extend drives.
We almost had this karmic thing go in our favor early in the game, where look, you can never prove this, but when they called Garrett short on that spot, it wasn't short. It was 3 yards. Their spot was 3 yards off. He had the first down.
I couldn't believe it.
And their spot was nearly 3 yards off. I've never seen a replay official.
It was terrible.
Fire back down so quickly as that. And it was almost like maybe in the first time in the history of replay booths, you heard the words, "Are you serious?" It's like, then it came back down almost instantaneously. And I couldn't help but think, did they just give a little slap on the rear and now every spot the rest of the night's going to kind of go our way?
Kind of go our way.
I don't know. But, I mean, that was about as far off as you get it. But they rectified it. They corrected it. So, I mean, officiating's hard. We talk about it all the time. But they corrected it. They got it right in the end. But, middle eight went well. Played clean football, 3-phase game. The special teams, the rear when we absolutely needed them. There were enough big plays in the offense. Against the numbers were skewed. The TFLs, the 9 TFLs, they're always going to skew things when you have a defense playing that aggressive, knocking you backwards. And we knew we weren't going to slam the door on this UCF offense, but to hold them below their averages to the extent that we did, they remain the number one offense in the Big 12.
Yeah.
So that was a stiff challenge. Now, coming up this week, we get the number one scoring offense in the Big 12. But UCF, I tell you what, Wes, if UCF had a bona fide quarterback,
cool,
I think they're a 10-win team.
Yeah, you might be right.
Because, one of the things we discussed, when's the last time you saw a team lead its conference in offense while starting 4 different quarterbacks? It's almost despite their play behind center, they led the conference in total offense because they do absolutely have playmakers from R.J. Harvey on down. And it's despite the inconsistency or lack of continuity behind center. If you put a pretty good quarterback or an above average quarterback or a solid quarterback, I'm trying to think of what tier I'd even go with. But maybe if you put a Baron Morton in there, he's a pretty good quarterback. Because KJ Jefferson didn't materialize the way they had hoped. They thought they were signing the next coming of Cam Newton, 250-pound quarterback playing for Gus Malzahn. It didn't shake out that way. And they've tried different things. They even brought Ja'Cory Brown in off the bench to try and get a spark because he's so athletic and shifty. But, that's one of the things that I noticed is Dylan Risk has played well-settled, solid football, efficient football through his first start. So the fact that we had him rattled, it kind of reminded of what we did to Brendan Sorsby at Cincinnati. Yeah. There were shades of that where we had Sorsby confused because we sure didn't have Baylor confused. Sawyer Robinson carved us up. But so to see us revisit some of that and some of that same body language of the quarterback position, some of the looks West Virginia was giving him, he wasn't comfortable with. So, I had to appreciate that.
No doubt. Total team victory, baby. A final thank you to our friends at Johnston Equipment. Now at Johnston Equipment, you can get 0% financing for 72 months plus a free loader on select Coyote models in stock. Visit Johnston Equipment on Route 33 between Weston and Buchanan. Plenty to go this week as we come down the home stretch. We will have the Texas Tech preview for you in just a couple days as well, too. Maybe for you to listen to on your Thanksgiving travels. We will have to talk about some Big 12 championship game scenarios as the Mountaineers are now still mathematically alive. We'll have another tailgate recipe from Big O. We'll have Phil Steele Friday to tee up the final week of the college football regular season. So we are still here rocking and rolling, despite it being a weird week with the holiday, short week, all those different things. But we will still, much like a Thanksgiving plate, Jed, we'll still have all the ITG fixins for everybody this week.
Wes, I'm on an absolute roll. Okay. We had the win on Saturday. at halftime on Saturday, and people get tired of me talking about this. The trainers table where they have the proteins and the foods. Okay, they put out protein bars, energy chews or jelly things, all these types of things. There might even be a bag of jerky on there, strips of bags of jerky for protein for the kids to grab. They added hot chocolate Saturday night.
Yeah.
Hot, fresh, hot chocolate. And I was like an 8-year-old kid. And now I come out of that, and 1:30 in the morning, I glance at my phone. I'm trying to settle into bed, and I see the Texas Tech Twitter accounts. First place I saw announce it. We have an early kick time in Lubbock, and I could not be happy. And oh, by the way, Pitt lost. So I'm still waiting to see my Pat Narduzzi press conference, which they hadn't uploaded when I last checked. All of Saturday night, I was checking to see if I got to watch Coach Narduzzi, I should say, whine about the loss to Louisville. But I haven't got to see it yet, but trust me, I will.
Yeah, maybe Pat Narduzzi should have been focused on the home stretch instead of trying to send out tweets ripping on the Mountaineers during Pitt's bye week. What's their record since that tweet? 0-4?
0-4, yeah.
Maybe less tweeting, more coaching, Nard dummy. Said something else there, but I'll keep it PG.
Yeah, we're keeping this G-rated.
So, obviously, still literally, figuratively, technically, literally, something to play for this weekend. We'll get into all that as the week rolls along. Safe travels if you are out there rolling along. But we will have the Texas Tech preview for you and Phil Steele Friday still to come this week. But that will do it for this edition of ITG. A big thanks to Skylar for throwing this together for us as always. For the Beer Truck Big O and the Signal Caller Jed Drenning, I'm Wes Euler. The one thing we ask of you is to be an ear and tell an ear about your new favorite WVU football podcast. Take care, everybody. We'll talk to you soon. You've been in the gun.
ITG.
The fun doesn't have to stop here.
Be sure to hit subscribe and never miss an episode.
If you have any questions, suggestions, or feedback,
be sure to follow us on X at In the Gun Podcast.
Join us again next time.
Until then,
tell an ear to tell an ear about your new favorite WVU football podcast.
This mission is over. It's over.